history, the scientific advances, everything that Israel has accomplished in all these years. Eve told us how it feels to live in Israel, how it feels to have children in the army, how it feels to live every day surrounded by who knows what. That is something those of us who were on this trip will never forget, right? Everybody's nodding. So when Eve said, I'm coming to North America, we said, yippee! If I need to give you background about Eve, I will read the official, which says, more or less, that Eve is actually from California. And she made Aliyah to Israel and has lived there for
1988.
18 years.
28 years.
108. Something within 8 years, yes. With her many children. And she has become, in addition to a guide, and the best guide, believe me, because now I've been on 3 trips with Eve, best guide. She's also very active in various Israeli organizations, all of which help to give us, who don't live in Israel, an understanding of what life is like in Israel. And here she is today to talk about something that's happening in America, which is the upcoming election seen through Israeli eyes. And so here she is, EveHarow.
Okay, so first of all, it's so wonderful to be here and to see familiar faces. And I have to start by saying that I don't represent all Israelis because it's impossible. This is a synagogue, so you might be aware that people don't agree with each other. It might happen occasionally in this room, right? So the same thing happens in Israel because it's a country of Jews. If you think about a very, very, very big synagogue. Okay? So, but what I want to do is to speak for a little bit about the different thoughts that Israelis are having there and why it's different than Jews in America. Okay? And just to add just a little bit, because last night I was on the phone with my husband, and it was about 6 o'clock in the morning in Efrat where I live, and he was telling me that he was watching like a whole infiltration happening. I don't know if you heard the news this morning, but right across the street from my house. An Arab had infiltrated, and they found him, and they got him, and thank God everybody was fine. So, so one of my kids WhatsApped me and said, you probably shouldn't leave home. Not that I can protect anybody when I'm there, but we live it's not just in the newspapers, okay? Our reality is a very interesting one, and Israel is, we're East and West meet, but really meet, okay? So Israel is very much like the United States in the sense of being a democracy, a place of freedom of speech, all the values that Americans love we have in Israel, which is why I feel so at home there. But it's also in the Middle East, and there's other things going on. Our neighbors, Israel's pretty much the size of New Jersey, more or less, right? And we don't do too much cross-border visiting, okay? Like our produce has to be flown to Europe. We can't truck things around. So, on one sense, we very much understand the mindset of the Western world, and on the other hand, we live in a very different reality, and there's no question I've spent more than half my life now in Israel, that my viewpoints have changed by living that reality. But I come back to the United States a lot. I love the United States of America. I did not leave this country because I felt persecuted or in any way that I didn't love my life here. I moved because my husband and I, we now have 7 children at the time, we had fewer, felt that there was a miracle that there was a Jewish state and that we wanted to be a part of it and be a part of shaping it. And it's definitely been a lot more interesting than we ever thought. But the ties are still very deep here. So, having said that, there are a few groups of, there are many, many groups, and this will focus on a few. One of them are people like myself, Americans who moved to Israel and still have the right to vote in this election, okay? No representation without taxation. Was that second grade that we learned that? I pay American taxes, I get to vote. I haven't a clue as to what I'm gonna do, okay? The obvious question that people will have is, well, is he or she going to be good for Israel? That would make sense. But I take it a little deeper because I know that when I put that ballot in, I'm voting for the President of the United States. And my feeling is that I need to vote for a president who's going to be good for America, despite the fact that I live in Israel. And one would think that that would be my overriding concern. And it's a very large concern. I still feel, as an American, that that ballot has to go into the box of who I feel is best for the United States. Sometimes the person, most times the person that's best for the United States is also the best for Israel, but not always. We're two separate countries with two different plans, and they don't always meet. Like, I can tell you that having lived in Israel during the last 8 years of this particular administration, it's been a very difficult time, okay? Because when you live in the Middle East, you understand that people appreciate power. Somewhere along the line, power became synonymous with something bad. Although, as I've heard more than one person say, and I don't remember who, so I can't quote names, the only thing worse than power is powerlessness. And as a Jewish people, we've been to that. So yes, you have power and you have to use it wisely, but you also have to be very careful of giving it away. And so a lot of Israeli perceptions is in the last 8 years or so, America gave away its power. And that a lot of the chaos that is now around us in the Middle East, in Syria, which is just horrible what's happening in Syria, is because there's a vacuum of power. Now, remember that a lot of Israelis, close to 1 million, if not more, are from the former Soviet Union, right? The Russian Aliyah, not just the, I remember wearing the bracelet, and by the way, I didn't just get out of the hospital. I'm here also on the JNF, they have their yearly weekend, okay, that's where I just came from, and for security reasons, I don't have to wear this bracelet, and I made the mistake of taking mine off on Friday, and got a real tongue lashing from the security guy when I tried to get back in, so this is staying on. I think he glued it onto my arm. So if I have to go back there now, I dare not take it off. But people probably think I escaped from like a psychiatric hospital or something, which you might agree with at some point by the end. But a good proportion of Israelis come out of the Soviet Union. Okay? Another good proportion of Israelis come out of countries where they weren't schooled like I was on Thomas Jefferson and on the values of democracy, right? Half of Israelis, their parents or grandparents come from other countries in the Middle East, right? The so-called Sephardi Jews, it's really misnomers, Mizrahi Jews. So you have a lot of Israelis who aren't necessarily seeing the things that we would see, we as Americans, as the ultimate goal in a leader. All right? So, for example, Putin is now getting stronger in the Middle East. He's making his intentions felt in Syria. And the Israeli government is working with him. You don't really want to work against somebody like Putin, but also, we want to stay out of Syria. But he's admired by a lot of people in Israel because he's strong. Because you may not like the guy or want to marry him into your family or anything like that, but a lot of people in Israel look at him differently than, say, others might, because he knows what he wants for his country, and he's going to go in there and get that. All right? So when you understand the Israeli mentality and where people are coming from, there are different things that are admired in a leader. One of the things now that Israelis have very short fuse for is corruption. We currently have a former prime minister sitting in jail, a former president sitting in jail. One of the things that Natan Sharansky has said is that he was one of the few members of Knesset who didn't go to jail either before or after he became a member of Knesset. It's not funny. I mean, we say it with a lot of pain. The good part of it is that we're lancing the wound, okay? These people are being gone after and paying for what they did. And so the corruption isn't just that someone just like played around a little bit when they were in leading positions. It has led to people dying. That is our that is our threshold in Israel. That certain leaders have done things while they were in office that quite possibly led to a war or led to some agreement that perhaps should or shouldn't have been signed or was signed for the wrong reasons, and ended up in people paying with their lives. So it's not just like a tax thing, and you could say it's money. that also matters, but it's about lives. And so when we look now at the American elections, okay, one of the things that concerns people about Hillary Clinton is that it seems like there's, you know, a lack of credibility or the Clinton Foundation or whatever it is. So that's one of the concerns when it comes to Hillary Clinton, and it's a big one, okay? To her credit, she has experience in government, which is a very, very big thing as well. There seems to be a genuine warmth towards Israel. Her husband was very much liked in Israel. You might not like his policies, and you know, Oslo and some of the things that were done during his tenure have unraveled to a great degree, but there's a feeling in Israel that the Clintons admire Israel, care about Israel on a personal level, but some of the issues surrounding her now are definitely making Israelis wary. On the other hand, we have, and I'm not telling you guys anything obviously you don't know, okay, these are things I'm sure, we have a total unknown, okay, someone who in Donald Trump, someone who has, the closest the word that I keep coming back to is what he doesn't have, which is gravitas. Like, this is everyone knows what gravitas means, because don't ask me to explain it, you can Google it while we're sitting here, okay? Like a seriousness, how would you, you know, president, like, gravitas. That's what it means. Okay, to be presidential, to not say everything that you feel like saying. This is not like a movie with your thoughts running out. Okay, to somehow be respectful of people. You know, we all have our thoughts in our heads, but especially if you're going to be in the political world, you have to be respectful. You're going to be president of all of America, of all of the minorities in America. America is made of minorities, okay? The whole country now is a lot of minorities all, you know, melting pot in together. All right, and there's a lot of, excuse me?
You have to be a mensch.
You have to be, exactly. Okay, I don't know if it's in the definition for gravitas, but you have to care about Americans. Not just America, the country, but about Americans. For me, and Phyllis kind of, alluded to it in the lovely introduction, it's about people. It's still all about people. One of the things that I do as a guide is, I love Masada, but it's about, and there's a story at Masada, but I do whenever I can to get people to people. Because still, we're what matters. Even though there's a lot of us and there's social media and a lot of people think that friends are how many people you have on Facebook and not actually people you want to sit with and tell things about face to face. Okay, a lot of things have changed. So that's what bothers us about him. And there's a total unknown here of one day policy here, one day policy there. So he has a daughter-in-law who may or may not be Jewish, depending on if you go with the conversion that she had, which is another thing, okay? And some of his advisors are people who care about Israel. But, if I had to sum it up, a lot of Israelis are feeling it's like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. And I hate using the word devil, but there's just a lot of enthusiasm in this election in Israel. And as somebody who, again, as one of those American Israelis, I think, what happened to my America? Is this like the best we can do? This is such a great country. This is such a great country. Is this really the best that we can do, both for the Democrats and for the Republicans? There's nobody else who can lead, not just the United States, but the world. Because what we're seeing, and this is, again, when we live in the Middle East, you see the shuffle. And I mentioned it a little bit with Putin, but you see there are no vacuums when it comes to leadership. All right? You can't, in Hebrew, there's an expression, yesh hamatzui v'haratzui. There's what you want, the ratzui, and there's what it is, there's reality. Okay? And you have to kind of like work your way, into there. And I don't think that I'm saying it just because I was born and raised in this country. I see the United States as needing to lead the world in many ways. Okay, morally, the values that the United States had, and there's a lot that has, and there's a lot that's going wrong here also, without question. Some of the people that I guide, some people that I speak to when I come to the United States, are Christians who are not so happy with things that are happening in America. I don't know how many of you actually have what to do with Christians, because I know a lot of times, like when I lived in America, I had very little to do with Christians, only since I went to Israel, ironically, and became a tour guide, and now meet with people there, that I'm like suddenly exposed to the entire Christian world that lived across the street from me when I grew up in America, but I had nothing to do with them, because the Jews tended to stay on their own. And there's a lot going on with them also. They're worried about loss of faith and family and the things that are very important to them, that are very important to America, and they're not sure what's going to happen here either. And one of the things, just as an aside, that I talk to them about is how Israel can give them a lot of answers. Instead of looking at us like some kind of throwback to wherever, or ignoring us, or whatever it is, worse, and we don't have to get into the history, there's a lot that Israel represents that is what America used to be. That kind of patriotism, which I also see seems to have been lost in the United States. Are there, do people consider themselves really patriots? The world has gone to a great degree, and again you see this in the Middle East, back to tribalism. Tribalism is such like a, you think of someone like, not being modern, but somewhere in everybody there's this need to belong to a larger family. Let's just call it a tribe, for lack of a better word. So I see, with my husband specifically, that a lot of times it manifests itself in sports, okay? Becoming like, a fan of a certain team. So for some people, that's where their tribalism goes. And for others, like what's happening in Syria, for example, it gets much worse and much more dangerous. So is America some kind of still larger tribe? Do people in the United States feel loyal to the United States as a whole? I talk to vets, do people come back who are fighting for the United States, spilling blood for the United States? And I'm sure all of you know what we feel like in Israel. I have a son in a combat unit, all right? So in Israel, there's like nothing that we don't do for our soldiers, and we, and it's, they're the ones who, protect us all the time. It's something. But I'll talk to American vets, and they don't feel that same kind of caring when they get back. Even if someone didn't think they should go, they went. They came back without a leg, if they didn't come back in a bag. So at least some kind of appreciation for the sacrifices that they made to keep this country great. So I think some of what we're seeing now in this election is a lack of appreciation for the sacrifices that people have made to keep America great. Somewhat of like an entitlement. And there's a little aside, he's not in the running anymore, but what I particularly found fascinating is the Bernie Sanders phenomenon in this election. Because in Israel, we have a lot of experience with socialism. Everyone knows what a kibbutz is, right? That's socialism. That's a way of living, a social life where there's a collective and people decide together and they share the profits, or if things don't go well, they all suffer. And socialism is on its way out now in Israel. It was fantastic for when the kibbutz movement first started, over 100 years ago, when people came with nothing except their brains and their hands, provided food for the country. If you could light up the periphery of Israel, it would be lit up with kibbutzim, all right? And that kind of working together and sharing, as I said, sharing the ideas and sharing the goals together. But that's waning. There are very, very few kibbutzim right now that are still serious kibbutzim, okay, meaning that they don't have it to some degree privatized, because the world has changed and people want to work hard and have their own thing and not necessarily have someone tell them what to do. And so that's changing. And to see that there was a very serious movement here to promote somebody who was promoting socialist ideals, we found was really, really fascinating. So meaning, and a lot of the young people that were backing him also. So showing that there's an unhappiness here in the United States. And I guess it's being, we see that in terms of like, who's running to run the country. So Israel is hoping for the best for the United States. It's our best friend. Again, we don't always see eye to eye. And I just want to throw something else in there, because a lot of the discussion has been about the aid package that was just signed. You're familiar with that? The United States just signed. So I'm going to go out on a creaky limb and say that I don't think Israel should take any money from the United States at all. I think that Israel should get off the aid of the United States. I know that there are many people who would smack me upside the head for saying this, okay? And also because, and quite rightly so, Israel does deserve, to a great degree, to be compensated for things that we do for the United States, especially in the realm of intelligence, all right? One of the major reasons that thank God, there hasn't been another 9/11 is because of the intelligence that Israel provides to the United States. Again, talk about people, the humans, what they call the human intelligence that we have on the ground, because we speak the language, because we understand the mindset, okay, has kept not just the United States, but other countries safe. A lot of the development of things that Israel has done and shares with the United States. So, but it bothers me that it's done in like an aid package, because it makes it sound like we're some like little country, this little banana republic that needs help. And as an Israeli, I don't feel that we need help. I think we're a partner of the United States, a full and equal partner of the United States. So, you know, again, the most loyal ally that the United States has anywhere in the world. The United States could not afford to create an Israel if we weren't there. The Sixth Fleet only holds so many people. Okay, a country where you can store whatever you need, keep your, you know, your interest in the Persian Gulf, the oil, whatever it is, safe. And it really promotes the values of the United States in you know, in a world that's increasingly going in different directions. So, but it bothers me that it's aid, all right? And I'm assuming that whoever wins, the Republican or the Democrat, is still going to abide by that agreement and still do that. But I would like to see, and again, this is a renegade opinion, I would like to see that being phased out. And there's also, a lot of Israelis are going to lose their jobs eventually because of that aid, because it's contingent upon being spent in the United States. So, and that means that things that Israelis are doing, different companies that we have, are now going to lose the contracts in favor of American contracts. Let's face it, that's why a lot of the people in Congress vote for that, because if you're in, I don't know, you know, St. Louis or something, and your constituents work for McDonnell Douglas, you want to give your people, that's why you're in office, right, is to make sure that your people do well, and that's what your interest is going to be. So I do understand that America loves Israel, Congress, but sometimes it comes with conditions that as an Israeli now, I think are not good for us, or for either side. So it's, I don't know, I hope nobody came here thinking that I was going to like answer some question, that I was going to like bring my Torah from Sinai from Israel and say, this is the 11th commandment, thou shalt vote for X. Because we're just as confused, appalled, upset, befuddled as everybody here. Again, because of my place as being able to participate in these elections, it's a little bit different. I mean, there's not that many of us. There's not that many people in Israel, a few percentages, who have the right to vote in the American elections. So my lawyer is also the head of Republicans in Israel. And he was a friend before he was my lawyer, Mark Zell. And so it was very funny because he was on the radio in Israel this morning, being in Israel radio, and he's backing Trump. He's Republicans in Israel. And the Israeli interviewer, Razi Barkai, said to him, but just 2 months ago, you were on the show telling me how you hated Trump, because I think he was backing, I don't know who was backing, I think Ted Cruz at the time, I don't remember, but it was Ted Cruz. So now here 2 months later, you're telling us how great Trump is. And he said, look, he wouldn't be my ideal candidate for the Republican Party, but I do think that he would be good for Israel, and that we should support him, and you know, that we can trust him, and he understands the idea of meaning strength, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, it's interesting, to say the least. What I don't want to be is in a position to not vote. I think everybody has to put some slip in the ballot, okay? One of the things that I have learned after being out of the United States for so long is how precious the right to participate in who your leaders is. I do not understand people who do not vote. That what you're saying is you're letting other people decide for you. But so many people have done so much and given so much for this country to be the exact opposite. For it to be a democracy, which means the people decide. That is so huge. Most people in the world don't get to decide who leads them. And it's usually the guy with the biggest gun, or the sharpest knife, or all of the above. all right, nasty, we tend not to see that in America. Americans tend to be, and it bothers me a lot, very sheltered in many ways. You got the Pacific, you got the Atlantic, and you got Canada and Mexico surrounding you, all right? It's a very big world out there, and it's a world with a lot of really nasty people who are aiming for the United States. Anybody who thinks that, like, Israel has different problems in the United States doesn't understand that we're really the trailer for the movie. In general, the Jews tend to be that. Whatever Islam is up and about starts with us, okay? But the same, we're just the little Satan. America's the great Satan. So, even if you have to go into the voting booth with a clothespin on your nose, and as an Israeli, I can tell you that I can lend you some clothespins, okay? Because there aren't too many elections in Israel where we're like bounding into that ballot booth, so excited, wearing the t-shirt, okay? A lot of times it's, well, they're less bad than the other ones, so we're just going to go with that and hope for the best. And since prayer is a local call, we throw that in too. But vote for whoever it is. Look at whatever's important to you, and I would hope that for all of you, their stand on Israel is important to you, okay? As Jews, as Americans, not just as Jews, as Americans, the relationship needs to be maintained and strengthened, and we need to make sure that Israel stays strong. But you have to decide. Because that is not a God-given right, it's a man-given right, and don't lose it. All right, it's too precious to live in a democracy to just say, I'll just a plague on both their houses, I can't decide. All right, even if it's just one little thing, get in there and put it in the ballot box. All right, I really hope that whoever does win will be good for Israel, but good for America. All right? This is too great of a country to be playing around, really. So if anybody has any questions. Yes?
Hillary Clinton has a personal assistant, a woman, who's from an Arab background. And I was wondering I don't know if you would just how much influence and in what direction does she, because Hillary has termed her a second daughter.
So the question was that Hillary Clinton has a close aide who is from an Arab family. Do I think that affects her? So I'm going to, given the fact that I live in Gush Etzion, I live in Efrat, okay, which is a controversial area, I'm going to tell you that I don't know if that should matter. I'm not a knee-jerk, that person's an Arab, that means they hate Israel. I would like to think more highly of Arabs. I think that they have opinions that are not necessarily tribal, to get back to that. And I would hope that her loyalty lies to America and what's good for America. So I wouldn't say that should be a reason to not vote for Hillary Clinton. There might be other reasons to not vote for Hillary Clinton. But has that person come out with statements? Do we know what she's thinking? Or is it just the fact that she's born to Arab parents? I don't think that's enough to say, that's a no-go zone. All right? I mean, that's supposedly one of the great things about America, right? Look at the Jews here. I mean, sadly, you have a lot of Jews who aren't even pro-Israel anymore. I'm not saying that that's a good thing, but I'm saying that Jews don't tend to vote in a bloc at all anymore in the United States. You have, especially the younger generation, has changed tremendously from my generation. I think most of you are, somewhere in that generation. As the Holocaust gets further and further away, as people forget what it's like when we didn't have an Israel and when we were powerless and no place to go. So there's this kind of taking for granted that, as Jews integrate more, and as you have, a lot of people talk about intermarriage in the United States, and I'm sure you all know that, the rates are climbing. Not only does it mean that Jews are marrying non-Jews, it means non-Jews are marrying Jews. It means that it's okay to marry someone Jewish if you're from a Chinese family or whatever, right? So there's really that acceptance of Jews here in America. And I think that maybe, just maybe, that's a little bit premature to think that all the anti-Semitism and all the things that we suffered from over the years have gone away. I think it could flare up more easily than you think. So, you know, I understand your concern, for sure. But I know Arabs in Israel who are, unfortunately, they're not represented in Israeli parliament by people who should represent them. The Arab members of Knesset, Israeli parliament, I think do a tremendous disservice to their constituents in Israel by being virulently obnoxious and not loyal to the state. But Arab Israelis that I know understand very well, especially after the last decade, watching what's going on around us, how wonderful it is to live in Israel, and are really trying to integrate. I'm not talking about the Palestinian problem, that's something else. I'm talking about Israeli Arabs are trying very much to integrate into Israel. And so as Israelis, we can't just say, well, they're Arab, so of course they're going to be pro not Israel, because we're seeing a shift in them also. And maybe it's the same thing in the United States. I don't know. Yes.
You said you're from a controversial area, so I guess you're saying you're from a settlement?
Yes.
What we know settlement. Can you discuss that? Because I believe one candidate is against them and one is for them.
Right. So that's why probably most of the Jewish Americans living across the so-called Green Line in Judea and Samaria will probably end up voting for Trump. Okay, because he has expressed, at least recently, some dissatisfaction with the Oslo Accords and the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas and some of the people, you know, there. And he doesn't have the history of being invested in that, which Hillary, through her husband, does. Okay, they were part of creating that to begin with. And so, you know, some of what the Republican candidates, a lot of the Republican candidates were saying over the course of the elections, which is that Israel doesn't have anyone to talk to, and right now the two-state solution needs to be kind of frozen until we have somebody to negotiate with, would be what a lot of people would agree with on that level. Having said that, it's a leap to say that because that, you know, that fit in more with what we're seeing, people are enthusiastic about Trump, okay? But he does fit in more with that Republican line than Hillary Clinton does. Hillary Clinton does. But not all Israeli Americans live in Judea and Samaria. People live all over the place with a lot of different, you know, a lot of different views and a lot of different ideas. I'm friends with Gil Hoffman, who's a reporter for the Jerusalem Post. So, you know, I talk to him occasionally here and there, or read what he writes about it. And right now it seems pretty tied in Israel. Between how Israeli Americans are going to vote. But I think a lot of times people, I think Shimon Peres, who's, wish him a speedy recovery, I think he's the one who said that in Israel, people tell the truth to the pollster and lie in the voting booth. So basically, we don't know. I think he's the one who pointed that. It was a clever thing to say, yes. Yes, exactly.
Sort of following up on what you've just been saying, my daughter's lived in Tel Aviv since 1990.
Great.
And she's right now very active, including votes for Hillary. She's finding, at least in Tel Aviv, a lot of sympathy.
A lot of reception, receptivities, yeah.
So the way in which people look at the American elections between the West Bank
Absolutely.
and Greater Israel can be very different.
Absolutely, and that's what I was saying. You know, the same.
I have pointed out that I think you said there aren't that many. I think it's about 200,000. At least that's what I've heard. And plus these American Israelis.
Somebody hinting something? Okay. I got the hint.
I can't hear.
But I pointed out to her that because this Israeli vote is going to be largely people who have residences in states like New York, New Jersey, California, states in which the electoral votes are going is
Right.
there was a foregone conclusion.
Exactly.
Florida, encouraging having
Right. Blue states. Yeah.
But do you have any comments on that? As far as
Yeah, well, So that's why a lot of those 200,000, if that's the number, may just not vote, because they'll say like, doesn't matter, you know? But as I said to you, I feel the same. You know, ultimately, we should vote. Look, Israeli Americans have an out because they could say, but I don't live in America, so if I'm not, you know, doing the day-to-day, then it's not that important to vote. Which is, you know, there's something to that. But as I said, if I'm still have the American passport and still pay my American taxes, then, you know, I think it's something that I have the right to be able to do. But very much so, Israeli Americans are not some monolithic block. People came to Israel for different reasons. People live in different places in Israel. People have different priorities. When it comes, I think what unites us though, be it Tel Aviv or be it, you know, Gush Etzion, is wanting Israel to be strong and secure, to be economically viable, you know, to not have to be dependent on anyone, which is very important, and you know, to maintain the values that we see as the same, the democracy. It's not such an easy thing, this Judaism and democracy balance. That's probably for another debate, but it's a balance. But I'm so glad that she lives there. Good for you. Yes.
Our president and your prime minister have been somewhat at odds about the building in the West Bank. How do you feel as an American and as an Israeli about that?
I think that Israelis need to be able to do what we think is important for Israel without other countries interfering. That's what I think. And I understand where American policy is, but I do wish that my own prime minister had more Israeliness in him when it came to this. And that is the constant balance. And I started off by saying America and Israel don't always see eye to eye. And this is one of the things that we don't always see eye to eye on. There needs to be, I believe, a little bit more respect for the Israeli voter. And now I'm flipping it. I know I'm here talking about the American elections. I just want to say that Israeli voters know our reality. When we vote, sometimes we feel after an election that the world is looking at us and saying, what's wrong with you people? Don't you realize you just elected a terrible person? But this is our country. We understand the issues that are in our country. We live it, okay? And it's not necessarily what people see from the other parts of the world. So this is the government that we elected. Give us the respect that we deserve as a democracy to, it's either going to be good or bad, but we're the ones who end up paying the price. And if there's a policy that the government, or the majority of people who voted for the government feel is okay, then we should be allowed to do that. Okay, obviously, from where I live, it's difficult for me to see that the Arabs in Judea and Samaria are allowed to build as much as they want, and the building freeze is only on the Jews. I think that's a double standard. Either tell everybody to stop, or tell everybody to build. But we have to be very careful in the world of not punishing the law abiders. Okay, so sometimes people will say, well, like we can't talk to Hamas, for example, because they're not going to listen to anything we say. So Hamas can literally get away with murder. But the law abiders and the people who it does matter, they don't want to get fines and they don't want to get tickets and they don't want to get arrested, so we play the game. And I think we have to be very careful in general in the world to understand that it's very tenuous, the message that goes out that sometimes not playing the game at all gets you what you want. All right? And that is that kind of situation. The Palestinian Authority is not abiding by the agreement. They're not doing what was supposed to be done. They can do, they can build while the Jews can't. And that's something that Israelis from Little Israel, from Greater Israel, whatever, feel like there's certain areas that are beyond really discussion, okay, that are within the consensus. And at least within those areas, we should be like, or Greater Jerusalem. We can't build apartments in Gilo. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Jerusalem. Gilo, or areas that Israel said, this is our capital. And for the vice president to get all upset when Israel wants to build apartments in our capital, a lot of Israelis, whether they feel that we should be able to or not, are saying like, why is it your business? All right, and look, I didn't come up so much in this last election. There's not one embassy in Jerusalem. There's not one country in the world that has their embassy in Jerusalem. We're the nobody. They're gone. It's also gone. All right. We're the only country in the world that says this is our capital, and everyone says, well, we're not putting our embassy there. All the embassies are in Tel Aviv. All right. Not even in West Jerusalem, the part that shouldn't be controversial, right? And that's insulting. That's insulting. Like at some point, come on, you know. So we also feel sometimes that we're not treated the way that we should be treated.
I'm going to do something very unpopular right now and say that I'm only going to allow Eve to take 2 more questions. And the 2 questions are going to come from our current president, because he had his hand up, and our previous president, because he had his hand up. So, Rich, why don't you go first?
Is this because we're talking about presidential elections and the president's here, or this is what's happening?
I have a very quick question. When you vote, which state you voted? Because in America, it's electoral college.
So my last residency is California.
Okay, so like, because you don't have a California address, you just get a California ballot.
Yes, that is, I believe, how it works, because now I'm going to be embarrassingly honest and tell you that I did not vote in the last American elections. Okay, because I was like, ugh.
You're voting in this one?
So, but after just standing up here and telling you all how important it is to vote, yes, yes. Don't ask me what yet, but I will. I will.
Okay, Eve,
Yes.
I know this is really impossible, but if you took personalities out of the equation or so, and just look at the Democratic Party versus the Republican Party, do you think the Israelis favor one versus the other in terms of how the thoughts are, in terms of the policies and such?
In general, Israelis, not. The majority would probably prefer the Republican platform. I would say, yeah. Look, you're seeing it kind of reflected in Congress also. We have much more support on the Republican side of the aisle than on the Democratic side of the aisle in general for things. So, but that's, again, very, very generalized. And also, take the word liberal. Liberal doesn't mean anymore what it meant 20 years ago. You know, some of the definitions have changed. So I think when we talk about left and right and this and that, we're still maybe thinking about them in terms that don't necessarily apply, you know, to today. I mean, for example, you know, socialist in the Democratic Party, right? Bernie Sanders, a Marxist in the Democratic Party. Some the founding fathers might have scratched their heads a little bit about that, right? So there's a lot of things going on here now. But in terms of, you know, like staunchly backing, you know, Israel, it seems like the Republican Party does it more, you know, more straight than the Democrats, but I don't know what to tell you.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
There is a legal pad going around right now. At the top it says, I am interested in a Temple Bethel Israel trip. We have a guide, right?
And I want to promise you, we will not talk politics at all.
So if
No,
if
really,
that interests
really,
you,
really?
please get your name on it. If you can't find the legal pad, it'll be with me.
Is he going to be the tour guide?
Yes.
When are you talking?
You know, that is up in the air. You know, I need to have at least 15 people to even talk about it.
But in all honesty, everybody, this is my least favorite thing to do, is talk about politics. Because when it comes to Israel, and I hope you've all been or are planning to come, it's so much more than that. People who look at Israel through the political lens are missing 90% of the country. Yes, it's part of it, just like it's part of the American scene. But as Jews especially, there's so many ways to be proud and to connect, and the food is unbelievably good, and the history and the Bible and just everything. So, you know, I just want to end by saying, first of all, God bless America.
Thank you.
Really. That whoever wins and whatever happens should be good for America, should be good for Israel, because I believe that those two go hand in hand. The few years that are coming up are fraught with a lot of dangers, I think, for all the good people in the world. And by good people, I mean good people even living in countries who are having a terrible time. I don't mean good countries and bad countries. I mean all the good people in the world are going to be having a very difficult time in the next few years. I don't think that comes as any surprise. And I just hope that whoever wins has the strength of will and the backing of the American people to be able to get America through this and get Israel through this, and all ends up on the good side. Because the alternative is really not something any of us want to think about. So that's all I want to say.
Okay, I want to thank Eve for the great presentation, and I hope everybody enjoyed this. I also want to thank Phyllis Miller for making the arrangements. Just want to make an announcement or two. Number one, we have a number of other programs coming up next week. We have Bart Chateau, a person who's been on Broadway, and he'll be doing a presentation on Saturday evening. Tickets are $25 in advance, so $30 at the door. There's flyers outside if you'd like to join us, if you haven't already signed up for next Saturday night's show. We have other programs as well, but at this point, what I'd like to do is introduce Hildy Steinberg, who's one of my vice presidents, and she's going to talk about one of the things that we've been working on this year, which we're very proud of, the new members that we've been able to get into Temple Bethel. So now at this point, I'd like to introduce Hildy to you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Phyllis. And most importantly, thank you, Eve, for an inspiring afternoon. We've been working at Temple Bethel to increase our membership, and I am proud and honored and overjoyed to announce that there are 13 new members of Temple Bethel. Some of them are here today. Unfortunately, we just had to say goodbye for the afternoon to Harvey and Eve, and the Silvermans are new members to Temple Bethel, so let's give them a round of applause. I have certificates, and I have a small little gift on behalf of Temple Bethel to present to the members that are here today. So if I call your name or your partnership, come up to the bima and please accept this little token of welcome on behalf of the board of Temple Bethel. It is my honor to announce in no particular order, Bernie and Diane Fox. Welcome to Temple Bethel. Another new member is Florence Freed. Is Florence in the room?